Welcome into PFF's Week 5 preview show for the 2024 college football season. Max Chadwick alongside Dalton and Wasserman breaking down a must-see Week 5 of college football. Dalton, we have a lot of interesting games to talk about today. But first, before we do that, I wanted to talk about why you have the James Madison helmet over there right now. You want to break it down for the viewers why the James Madison helmet is over there, not FAU?
Because for the third week in a row, I actually had a pretty good week in fantasy football and still lost because every one of my...
I think you're just ass, dude. No, I think you suck.
I'm telling you, every one of...
This is 3 weeks in a row you're making this excuse.
Every one of my opponents has decided to have their best week of the season against me. Half PPR, and they're averaging 123 points against me. I'm just getting slapped right now. So... my friend, the winner, who gets to pick the helmet, if they beat me, they decided to honor James Madison's big win over North Carolina with the James Madison helmet, 70 points in that game, 70-50, and that is what is there instead of FAU.
Very fair. And before we get into the games, Dalton, also I want to talk about your shirt that you're wearing now. The Metallica with the Virginia Tech shirt.
Absolutely. I thought it's spectacular. Look at that right there. Look, they officially, like a few weeks ago, they announced a collaboration because, Virginia Tech obviously does the Enter Sandman thing before the game and does all that. So Metallica announced they announced an official collaboration with Vatech, and they announced a show next summer there at the football stadium on campus. So it's like an official thing, and I saw it. I thought it was the coolest thing ever. I love it. I get the Metallica logo. I get the hokey bird, and the fun thing is on the back actually is Virginia Tech's schedule. It looks like a tour.
Like a concert schedule.
A concert schedule. So I thought the Metallica logo and the hokey bird that's just a good combo, isn't it?
I didn't plan this, I promise, but you're wearing your shirt of your favorite band, right? Metallica's your favorite band?
Like top 3, yeah.
Top 3. Okay, Jesus. My favorite band I'm wearing right now is the Killers. I didn't plan this at all. So let's know in the chat what your favorite band is and whether or not Killers are better than Metallica.
They're not.
They are. They absolutely
silly.
are.
They
absolutely are. But
we have a show to do. Don't go there.
All right, Dalton. We got a ton of games to talk about today. 4 ranked games. Again, second week in a row, we have 4 games between top 25 teams. You and I are currently tied with an 18-6 record right now. We were 15-3 last week, and then I said, "Oh yeah, we're on fire right now. Nobody could beat us." And then we went 3-3 in week 4. So our worst week by a mile. So let's see if we can bounce back now.
They're getting harder. They're getting tougher, man.
Yeah.
With the conference play and how tight and how big these games are, it's getting tougher. And there was 3 or 4 of these, and I was like, man, I the margins are so narrow because some of these teams, we're getting into it now, ranked teams and conference opponents and rivalries and all of that, and the games meaning so much to the playoff chase too this early in the season that some of these were really, really hard to pick too.
Don, I don't want to alarm you, but in the chat right now, my boy Donnie says Killers is better, and then my mom, Shannon Chadwick, said Killers by far.
Okay, the second one's kind of biased. She's not gonna.
She actually bought me this shirt.
If my mom was in the chat, she would say Metallica.
I was very drunk at that concert. I was trying to get my credit card out to buy the shirt, and she's like, "Just let me buy it. I'll get this for you." So shout out Shannon Chadwick for buying me this shirt. It's a great shirt, my new favorite shirt. It was a hell of a night in Las Vegas. We had a great time. All right, Dalton, let's get into these games now. First game we're talking about today is number 20 Oklahoma State at number 23 Kansas State, noon Eastern time on ESPN. Really, the storylines to know for this game is pretty simple. These are 2 teams desperate to get back on track in a wide-open Big 12. Both of them suffered their first losses of the season this past weekend. Oklahoma State lost to then number 12 Utah, 22-19. Kansas State, far more embarrassing. They lost to an unranked team at the time in BYU by a 38-9 final score. But the winner of this game is right back in the thick of it in a wide open Big 12 race. But the loser of this game pretty much can't lose another conference game the rest of the season. Don't. I was looking at it. Pretty much every Big 12 championship game featured a team that had 2 losses or fewer in the conference play. So if you lose this game, you're still kind of alive, but you cannot lose another game the rest of the season. So if you want to make a college football playoff and even Big 12 championship game. So really, this is a massive game for 2 teams trying to get back on track right now.
No, absolutely. And I think the theme here is you've got 2 teams that just struggled. They got out of their element offensively last week, right, where they both fell behind. Both of them want to run the ball, and they just were not able to run the ball. Or, I mean, K-State ran the ball pretty well, but they're not built to function from big deficits like that, right? And 3 turnovers for the first time since last year's game against Oklahoma State, which they also lost. You got 2 teams that can't function with turnovers, and we've talked about Ollie Gordon and Oklahoma State. If they don't get him going, I'm not sure where they're going to go this season. It's just they can't. Alan Bowman's a good quarterback, but he's not a guy that you want carrying you week in and week out. And I think the same goes for Avery Johnson, at least on the passing side, where he's so young, but he's not ready to be relied on to throw the ball 35, 40, 45 times, right?
Definitely. So, Dalton, you have the Kansas State offense in this game. What should we be looking out for when Avery Johnson and the Wildcats have the ball?
So I think it was obviously a really tough game, and they got out-physicaled at BYU, and it's just a game where you go, okay, they got beat in all 3 phases. They got beat really soundly. But coming out of that game, it's not like there's any mystery as to what K-State's identity is, right? It's still their run game. Like I don't think even in a loss, we mentioned it that against Arizona, it wasn't a statement game. That's just Kansas State.
Yeah.
Last week in a loss in the same way, it was Kansas State. If you get ahead of them and they turn the ball over and they can't just lean on the run game while they're playing from ahead the entire time, that's also where they struggle. That's a part of their identity. So at the very least, they're a known commodity. And they had a loss or 2 like this early last year, and they just kept riding. They're going to stay consistent, and they're going to keep leaning on this run game. We've talked about it before. Avery Johnson, DJ Giddens, Dylan Edwards. That's the heart and soul of this team. And last week, even through some struggles in the passing game, on defense, on special teams, right, they still ran for 233 yards and had 8 explosive runs. So they're going to continue to stick with the formula. This is not a team that needs to make drastic changes or go, oh man, we need to drastically improve this passing game and change up the passing game this week. No, they just need to stick to their identity. And I think they will be able to do that against Oklahoma State, who, if you exclude sacks, they're allowing more than 200 rushing yards a game. Oklahoma State's run defense has not been great. It wasn't great against Utah last week. Against South Dakota State, they gave up well over 100 yards. Arkansas ran all over them. They have an opportunity here with this rushing offense to get right. Even a team like Tulsa ran on Oklahoma State. It has just been a weakness. And what is the one thing that I always talk about with K-State and opposing defenses? Who needs to play well?
The linebackers.
The linebackers.
Yep.
And the problem is Oklahoma State is having similar issues at linebacker as Arizona was when we were previewing that game. And what happened to Arizona's linebackers in that game? Big time struggle, right?
Yep.
And I told you, last year, linebackers, when they were facing Kansas State, had a 42 run D grade. It's closer in the 50s because BYU's unit played well last week, but Oklahoma State linebackers right now have the 4th lowest run D grade in the Power 5. It is the same challenge where 2 players in particular, Nicholas Martin and Jeff Roberson, they have to play their A game if they're gonna keep up with Kansas State in this game in Manhattan. Look, they beat K-State last year because K-State, they were throwing the ball more. They still had Will Howard starting, and they turned the ball over 3 times in that game. K-State's going to lean more on the run game because Avery Johnson's a more dynamic athlete than Will Howard was, and it's incumbent on these Oklahoma State linebackers to keep up. I feel very much the same about this matchup as I did when we previewed Arizona. Those are the guys that need to play better in their run defense, because otherwise, look, we've seen it in multiple games, even in games they've won. Oklahoma State has struggled in run defense, and that only gets harder as Colin Oliver continues to miss games.
Yeah, absolutely. And Dawn, one side of the ball is all about the run game. The other side of the ball is all about the run game as well. My matchup I'm looking for, will we ever see the 2023 version of Ollie Gordon ever again, honestly? Because he entered the year as our number 2 player in college football. Last year, led the nation in rushing yards, was second in rushing touchdowns, and yards after contact, won the Doak Walker Award as just a true sophomore. But this year, he has been very disappointing. Dolan, right now, he's tied for 6th in the country in carries, but he's 70th in rushing yards right now. He now has 3 straight games with fewer than 50 yards rushing. He only had 4 games below 50 yards all of last season, including the games where he wasn't really getting the ball that much, honestly, either. So I will say the offensive line has really not done him any favors either. Right now, he's averaging 0.6 yards before contact per attempt. That's the 9th lowest in the country right now. And it won't get much easier against a Kansas State defense right now that is 31st in the country in yards per attempt allowed at 3.9, and they only give up 0.9 yards before contact on average. So the Cowboys, if you notice that game against Utah, they were very one-dimensional, and Alan Bowman had to kind of win that game for them, and he couldn't do it. I'm worried right now that Alan Bowman and those receivers, I think it's a solid receiving core, but overall, it's an above-average passing game overall. If they don't get Ollie Gordon going, and if he does not become the superstar that he was last year, I have serious worries about this Oklahoma State offense and serious worries with this Oklahoma State team, and I think they desperately need him this Saturday against Kansas State to get back to his sophomore form.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they rode Ollie Gordon all the way to the Big 12 title game last year, and that's really – you go, why was Oklahoma State supposed to be good this year? Ollie Gordon.
Yep.
And Alan Bowman's a more complimentary piece, and they do. They have good receivers, Stribling and Brennan Presley, and guys who have played well so far in the receiving core, but it's not a passing game you're expecting to carry, right? It's not one of the 4 or 5 big-time passing games even within the conference, right? It was supposed to be complimentary to take the pressure off Gordon, but right now if they're not getting it done in the run game, and you're right, whereas K-State has a clear identity, even through a loss, and a big loss at that, they're going to keep that identity. I don't know what Oklahoma State's identity is right now.
No, I don't either, Dalton, honestly. That's a little alarming for this Oklahoma State team right now. So what is your prediction for this game, and who gets back on track, and who gets back into the Big 12 title race, and who suffers a devastating blow for their playoff chances?
I've got Kansas State 30-20. I just think that having that clear identity, getting to go home, getting to now, okay, you got punched in the stomach. You did. You went out to BYU, and they got physically outplayed, and they made mistakes, turnover, punt return touchdowns, breakdowns in coverage. They got all – I don't know if they got all their mistakes out in one game, but they must feel like, okay, let's just leave it in the past. Sometimes you get a loss, and you get so soundly beaten in all 3 phases that you go, you know what? Just flush it.
Yep.
We'll watch the tape for 2-3 hours, and we're just going to flush it, and we're going to get back to doing what we do, and we're just going to play a better game. And I think that's where Kansas State is at right now. I don't think that their struggles, the struggles between these two teams, are the same. I think Oklahoma State has fundamental issues. I think Kansas State, for now, played just one really, really bad game and can bounce back. They did it last year. They had an early loss. I remember it was on a Friday night to Oklahoma State, where it was just like, boy, what is with them? And they came back and they rattled it off until I think their last game of the season. They lost to Iowa State. They went on a big run after that. So I think it's just kind of gut check time. I think people have to remember Avery Johnson is a really young guy. He's going to go through those things, right? It's his first year starting. He's not the most refined passer in the world. This is their identity, win or loss, but at least they can be consistent with that. I don't know what Oklahoma State's identity is right now, offensively or defensively. Their secondary's okay, but if their front seven keeps playing like it's been playing, they're going to have a hard time in this game. K-State 30-20.
I honestly know Colin Oliver is a huge loss.
Big loss.
He is a really, really good player. And Don, I think you said it perfectly. Kansas State knows exactly who they are. And I'm picking Kansas State in this game as well, 27-24. They know exactly who they are, and even in that loss to BYU, they stayed the same. It was just ended up being the worst part of that, honestly. Oklahoma State is having an identity crisis right now because now all of a sudden, like we said before, entering the year, it was like, okay, Ollie Gordon, give him 50 carries a game, let him carry you to the Big 12 title game like last year, and he's not doing that right now. So it's a little bit of an identity crisis. I right now, I think this game is going to come down to who can run the football better, and I believe in Kansas State's three-headed monster in that backfield, especially against that Oklahoma State run D that's been a little vulnerable this year, more so than Ollie Gordon, who's been very, very slow to start his season against a Kansas State run D that's been pretty good. So again, like I said, it's going to be who runs the football better, and I think Kansas State is going to win that battle 27-24.
I think the one thing that needs to be said, too, is on paper, if you didn't watch the game, Oklahoma State lost by 3 points.
It was not a 3-point game.
Utah blasted them.
Yeah.
It was 22-3, and then they kind of laid off the gas the last 7-8 minutes or so. That they were dominated by Utah. If you just looked at the final score, you don't get the full story of that game. Utah was the better team on the field for pretty much the entire game, and then Oklahoma State messed around and made the score closer. But they got dominated, and I came out of that game. I came out of last week with a lot more questions about Oklahoma State than Kansas State.
Which is ironic considering Kansas State had a much more embarrassing loss. But it's like, no, you still know who they are.
They got, to be honest with you, the way they both got beat wasn't all that different.
Yeah.
It's just the final score made it look different for Oklahoma State. But at the end of, like, to me, in my gut, I see that game as 22-3 the way that it was before the final.
Another reason why the Kansas State one, we're not trying to say the Kansas State one wasn't bad, but they were in Provo at night in a raucous environment. Meanwhile, Oklahoma State was at home. And also, keep in mind, Isaac Wilson was playing at quarterback. It wasn't like Cam Rising was back there. You had a true freshman in Isaac Wilson who, quite frankly, was bad against Oklahoma State. He had like a 35 passing grade, and they still got outplayed in that game. So both of us taking Kansas State in that game. Let's see if we have the same prediction here, Dalton, for number 15 Louisville at number 16 Notre Dame, 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time on Peacock. Got to get your Peacock subscription if you want to watch this game, unfortunately. But the storylines to know in this game, Dalton, Notre Dame probably can't afford to lose again because they really backed themselves into a corner after losing to Northern Illinois a couple of weeks ago. And because Notre Dame does not play in a conference, so they can't guarantee themselves a spot in the playoff by winning a conference title, it can't also they only play 2 ranked teams the rest of the year right now on their schedule. So their strength of schedule probably won't be as strong as other teams fighting for at-large bids as well. And with a 10-2 Notre Dame against other 10-2 teams, just looking at their strength of schedule, that might not be enough to make the college football playoffs. So right now, Notre Dame's kind of walking a tightrope where they have a loss already, and they almost can't lose another game the rest of the year because they don't play in a conference and their strength of schedule isn't all that great. I don't know if a 10-2 Notre Dame can get into the playoffs, so they really desperately need to beat Louisville this Saturday.
I don't believe they will get in with another loss because if there's any maybe one saving grace that there could have been for Notre Dame, it's if Northern Illinois went undefeated and ran through the MAC and won that title and had some huge season, but they came out the next week and lost to Buffalo in overtime. So that's shot. Now it just looks like a really bad loss, right? And they can't, like you mentioned with their schedule, they really can't afford another one. They need to win all the good games they can. They have Louisville on the schedule, Georgia Tech, they have USC on the schedule later. I'm with you. I still think they need to run the table, and it starts with this one, but this is not an easy assignment at all.
Definitely. And Dawn, you have the Notre Dame offense in this game, which has been very disappointing to start the season. You're going up against a very good Louisville defense. So what should we know to see if the Fighting Irish can get back on track in this game?
So they have very quickly, with Riley Leonard at quarterback, become one of these teams where they're just going to run the hell out of the ball, right? And it's just very clear that their passing game isn't even what it was last year with Sam Hartman. So I wanted to know, after scoring only 14 on NIU, what did we do to come back against Purdue and against Miami, Ohio? What did we do to make this better? And the answer is essentially just, we just lean into a 3-headed rushing monster of our own. We've got Jeremiah Love, who's been really good. Jadarian Price has been really good. And at least Riley Leonard's feet have been really good, right? So you've got, it's not as creative a run game with Mike Denbrock calling the plays as, let's say, a Georgia Tech or a Kansas State or a team like that just, or even like, say, a UCF, right, where it's just really creative and you got different concepts. Like, Mike Denbrock isn't the most complex run game guy, but they got 3 really good players who are running for a lot of yards. Okay, that's what they're leaning into. The problem is you've got a Louisville team who just played Georgia Tech and only gave up 98 yards on 36 carries. I mean, they were dominant. Their defensive line, especially, you talk about Ashton Gelati, Tramel Logan, Thor Griffith. I mean, they've got guys up front who can just bring the hammer on a team's offensive line, and you're holding them to 98 yards rushing. You know how Georgia Tech is. They want to run first and then take shots, right? And Haynes King played well on the passing side, but that's not where they prefer to live. And that's even more the case with Notre Dame. And I just have to question, where does Notre Dame look? I'm going to be honest with you. Haynes King or Riley Leonard? Who do you want?
Oh, boy. Probably Haynes King.
I would take Haynes King. And with their environment, and Georgia Tech, honestly, has more consistent receivers, too. You look at Riley Leonard this year, 58.4 passing grade. That's 125th in the country. And you look at it when they get away from run game and any play action, without play action of 58. Even in a clean pocket, missing throws.
69.5 in a clean pocket.
69.5 in a clean pocket's not great. It's 110th in the country, and they can't work downfield at all. Honestly, I know they've tried with Bo Collins and a couple other guys, but 48.2 on 10-plus yard throws. They are one of these teams right now. They just have to run the ball every single play, and this is not the team that you want to do that. They've got stars up front on their defensive line. Louisville's defensive line is right now, it's one of the elite units in the country. That's not where you're going to beat them, is up front. And Notre Dame's got a really young offensive line that's still kind of piecing it together. We've talked about they came into the year with 6 combined starts on their offensive line, and I know the 2 backs are great, and I know Riley Leonard's mobile, but keep in mind, Louisville beat Notre Dame last year, and they shut out Duke last year when Riley Leonard was there, and I believe in that game they only blitzed him 4 times the entire game. We talk about, hey, don't blitz Riley Leonard. Make him stand there. Make him beat you with his arm. And he didn't beat Louisville with his arm last year. And honestly, with what he's put up so far this year, I don't know that he can do that. So Notre Dame's going to be leaning heavy on a run game, but they're running into a brick wall in this Louisville defensive line. And the only thing I would say, they may need Riley Leonard to win him this game. Louisville's had some issues in coverage. They're 103rd in the country in coverage grade. Haynes King had a really good week last week, but this Notre Dame passing game, they don't have the weapons. They don't have Eric Singleton and Malik Rutherford like Georgia Tech does. So I don't know where the answers come from in Notre Dame's passing game, but this could be a week where either they have it or they don't, and it could be the X factor in their entire season at winning or losing this game.
Yeah, definitely. And Notre Dame has to run the ball, really, and I think the same thing for Louisville. They got to run the ball, too, in this game. Louisville has been one of the most efficient offenses in college football this year. Right now, they're 6th in EPA per play, 4th in yards per play, and 8th in offensive grade. Also very balanced offensively, placing among the nation's top 15 offenses in both EPA per pass and EPA per rush. And Dalton, it's kind of surprising considering they lost Jawar Jordan, they lost Isaac Arendo from last year, and they're still running the ball really well. Guys like Isaac Brown and Duke Watson and Kewan Brown and Maurice Turner and Donald Chaney Jr., they have a very good committee backfield. They're going to need that run game against Notre Dame in this game because Notre Dame has been stellar against the pass, 3rd in EPA per pass right now. Notre Dame's defense has been 2nd best coverage grade in the nation. You got superstar defensive backs like Benjamin Morrison right behind me, Xavier Watts as well. Other guys were really, really good in that secondary. It's almost impossible to consistently get open against the Fighting Irish. Now, Colin Lacey might be coming back for this game. There's been a lot of talk that he's practicing right now. He's trying to get back. He hasn't played all year. He probably will be Louisville's number 1 receiver when he is out there. But even so, Notre Dame's defense against the pass is so elite. I will say, though, Notre Dame's run defense is 40th in EPA per play, and they allow 4.3 yards per carry, which is 55th in the country. So I really think for this Louisville offense, it isn't about Tyler Shuck and those receivers. It's about this backfield, that committee backfield they have right now, and their offensive line to carry this team to victory. So Notre Dame's got to run the ball in this game to win it, and I think that Louisville has got to run the ball to win this game as well.
Yeah, and that's Louisville's plan. That's Jeff Brom's plan is run the ball well, get to play action. We don't want Tyler Shuck. We didn't want Jack Plummer doing it last year. We don't want Tyler Shuck doing it this year, just dropping back and falling behind early and trying to work yourself out of obvious passing situations, right? Their run game and their play action game is really good, and Shuck can make big throws downfield if he's given the space and the windows to do that, and the run game is supporting him, right? So you make a good point. The one thing Louisville doesn't want to do is fall behind and drop back and throw into this Notre Dame secondary. I like Ja'Cory Brooks. I like Colin Lacey, but Ben Morrison and those guys in the secondary, that's the best part of their football team by far. You could argue all around it's the best secondary in the country. That's not where you want to attack them. I would not expect Jeff Brom to do it, at least without play action. Maybe you get an early shot to get the safeties out of the box and move some people around, but I don't think they're going to be attacking this secondary a whole lot.
Definitely. So Dalton, does Notre Dame keep their playoff hopes alive, or will Louisville pretty much end those playoff aspirations only week 5 of the season?
There are 2 things that have me leaning towards Louisville in this game on the road. And one, they beat Notre Dame last year and they out-physicaled them. And I know Notre Dame they were on like a stretch of consecutive primetime games, and honestly, they kind of
remember that? They played like 6 straight primetime games against like unreal opponents.
4 or 5 primetime national TV, like the biggest game. They played the biggest game of the week like 5 weeks in a row, and I think Louisville was like the 5th one. Yeah. And by the time they got there, they just ran out of gas and they couldn't catch Jawar Jordan and all that. But right now, to me, last year's Notre Dame offense was better than this one. It was more well-rounded. The offensive line, you had Joe Alt and Blake Fisher up front, right? You had a younger offensive line this year, but this Louisville defensive line is nasty. It is so nasty, led by Ashton Gelati. They're super physical. They're so good in run defense, and if Notre Dame can't find anything over the top, just like last year they really couldn't. I believe Sam Hartman threw 3 picks in that game. It just fell apart on them when Louisville forced them to throw the football. I think they held Audric Estime to like 30 yards or something in that game too. It just, they stopped the run. They made Notre Dame throw the football. I think it could be a very similar dynamic this year. I'm taking Louisville 24-20.
Wow. Okay. I will disagree with you on this one. I'm going with Notre Dame in this game, 27-23 final score. I think the Notre Dame defense will step up. I think the Louisville passing attack will really, really struggle in this game. And I like Jeremiah Love. I like him better than any of the Louisville running backs they have right now, even though Louisville's been really good running the ball. I think Notre Dame's going to do it. It's at home, too. It's in South Bend. I think Notre Dame's going to win this game 27-23, led by their defense, and they're going to keep their playoff hopes alive by beating Louisville in a close one in this game.
My other thing, too, is I would be less convinced if I didn't just see what Louisville's run D did to Georgia Tech last week. Holding Georgia Tech to, 2.5 yards a carry somewhere
it's
in
impressive.
there. 36 carries and 98 yards for a Georgia Tech run game that's really dynamic with Haynes and Haynes back there.
Yep.
That's really impressive. I mean, I understand Louisville's first two games. You go, okay, it was a soft first two games. FCS team, Jacksonville State is really struggling. But you do that to Georgia Tech, you have my attention. So I'm not even sure that Notre Dame's run game is better than Georgia Tech's is, honestly.
Yeah, Daryl Turner in the chat says he liked the under in this game. I think I kind of agree with
Yeah, I'm in on that.
The under,
I could see that. I don't know where it's at, but these are two really good defenses.
Yeah, really, really good defenses. So, yeah, we both are disagreeing on this one. I'm taking Notre Dame in this one, and Dalton is taking Louisville. Next game we're talking about, Dalton, is Colorado at UCF, 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time on Fox. This is a really good barometer game for Colorado, in my opinion, because it's really kind of difficult to gauge just how good Colorado is this year. They have 3 wins. They're 3-1 in the season, but their 3 wins have come against teams that either aren't in the FBS or aren't in the top 80 of PFF's power rankings in North Dakota State, Colorado State, who's 108th in the PFF power rankings, and Baylor, who's 83rd. And Colorado needed a miracle Hail Mary to beat them in that one. And Colorado's one loss came to Nebraska, who's 57th in that power ranking, and Nebraska beat the Buffaloes by 18 points in that game. Now, Colorado has improved some of its biggest issues defensively that we'll get into in just a second, and they have 2 of the best players in Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders, but they still have significant questions on that offensive line right now that could hold them back from being real Big 12 contenders. But this would be a good game against UCF, who's currently number 49 in our power rankings. Kind of just show, okay, where is Colorado in the Big 12? Are they one of the worst teams, or are they middle of the pack? Or if they really beat UCF pretty soundly, are they maybe one of the Big 12 contenders right now?
I think that's the case for both these teams. I know this is, I think, the one game without a ranked team that we're doing. This is an incredibly fun game. The contrast in style, what you have with Colorado and the star power, what they did last week, and I thought, I get that it's a miracle. Hail Marys don't happen often unless you throw it to an FAU great and LeJohntay Wester. But look, they got a little resilience to them all of a sudden. I kind of like it. Look, they got beat up at Nebraska. They did. Came back against Colorado State, and after last year's game and the rivalry and all the trash talking and all of that, came out and just shut down Colorado State, just beat them soundly, right? It was 28-9, I think it was.
Yes.
And then this game, there were haymakers thrown back and forth in this game all day. Sawyer Robertson was really good for Baylor with Daquan Finn out. They returned a kickoff for a touchdown. They're making diving catches in the end zone. Then Travis Hunter and Shedeur are willing them to touchdowns, and Wester with the Hail Mary. And it came down to the very last yard with Travis Hunter forcing the fumble to win the game. But I think actually what we've seen the last 2 games, and I think I want to go back to the Nebraska game too, the second half. They didn't give up a point in the second half of that game. They scored all 28 points Nebraska scored in the first half. In the second half of that game, Nebraska didn't score. And we saw, how many times last year did we see Colorado struggling, and then the floodgates open, they lose by 40, right? We're not seeing that. And I know you go, okay, well, keep in mind, 2 years ago, worst team in the Power 5. Last year, trying to figure it out, right, with just these guys, some of these talented guys we have, but nothing in the trenches. Now we're starting to find some resilience and some physicality. I've told you, they went in the portal this year. It was very targeted. They wanted guys in that front 7 who will play physical, or especially in run defense, because they were 122nd in run defense grade last year, okay? This year, they're up to 15th. The improvement on the defensive line, and especially at linebacker, 3rd best run D grade from their linebackers in the country.
That's insane.
Up into the top 40 in EPA per rush allowed. I think that was bottom 10 last year. 14th in run stops. And look, they do need to get better at stopping the quarterback running, and that's a big thing with KJ Jefferson in this game, right? I know RJ Harvey's the star for UCF right now. He's got, I think, 450 rushing yards in 3 games. RJ Harvey's really good. Gus Malzahn's a great schemer when it comes to this run D, but I really think what I've seen in this Colorado defense, especially at linebacker, Levante Bentley, who came back from last year, his run D grade, where is it here? I think it's up almost 40 points. It's up to 85. I think it's 85.7 his run D grade is up to. And they moved Nakai Hill-Green into the starting lineup over Trevor Woods after the North Dakota State game. Actually, if you take out that North Dakota State game, their linebackers are number 1 in run defense. They're just filling gaps. They're trailing each other. It's just a they're playing like really good, basic, fundamentally sound football, especially at linebacker. The D-line, there's not one star guy there. They're playing as a really good unit. The last 11 quarters, okay, plus that overtime against Baylor, they've given up 2 explosive runs to running backs in the last 11 quarters. Quarterbacks, a little more of an issue. Sawyer Robertson beat him with a couple quarterback draws. There was a long touchdown, like a 40-yard touchdown. They got to work on the quarterback thing and some read option, more complicated stuff. But as far as just filling gaps and stopping straight handoffs, they're actually playing really, really well. And now this is a barometer because UCF is leading the nation in rushing yards per game.
Yeah.
This is a whole different thing. But also, TCU, for as much as UCF ran for like 290 yards on TCU, but it was at like 5 yards a carry flat. It's high volume, right?
Yeah.
TCU did a pretty nice job not giving up too many explosive runs. They were ahead big in that game, and KJ Jefferson brought them back. But I think there is a blueprint here where you go, okay, this is the test game now. Okay, we saw Colorado State. We saw Baylor. Colorado State had some yards, but it was on like 2 big runs, and one of them was a wildcat. They need to work on quarterback run.
Yeah.
That's going to – I think actually – as much as Harvey's the star of the UCF offense, KJ Jefferson's the important part.
Yeah.
If KJ Jefferson,
X-factor,
he hasn't been running a ton the first, like he hasn't really popped off. I think he's got 150 or 160 rushing yards without sacks through. I always have to throw that in there. I hate that. I always have to throw that in. But he hasn't really exploded on the run side yet. He had a great second half throwing the ball against TCU. But I'm kind of waiting on KJ Jefferson to really explode. But if he doesn't, and UCF's handing the ball off a lot, or if Colorado can find their way ahead, UCF will stick with the run game. But if you know they're handing off, Colorado on straight handoffs has been really good. I'm not exaggerating. I'm just telling you what I see on tape. They made the switch at linebacker. They got better defensive linemen this year, and the run defense is a lot better. They have a shot in this game if their run defense plays the way it's played the last 3 games.
It honestly does. And yeah, we're kind of waiting on KJ Jefferson rushing breakout because when he was at Arkansas, he was one of the best rushing quarterbacks in the entire country. So we're still kind of waiting on that. This might be the game, honestly, for him to show that. Dawn, you kind of illustrated right there how Colorado significantly improved their physicality defensively. There are still issues with their physicality offensively. That's kind of the big one in this one is, can Colorado's offensive line hold up just enough for Shedeur Sanders and those weapons to win downfield? Right now this year, the Buffaloes have allowed a pressure on 35.7% of their dropbacks. Is the 8th worst mark among Power 4 schools. Their 17 sacks allowed are tied for 4th most in the country. But Shedeur Sanders, Dawn, really, when he's kept clean, their passing attack is one of the most explosive in college football. Right now this year, he has a 93.1 PFF grade when he's kept clean. That's 3rd among all quarterbacks in college football. His best trait is his ability to read and dissect a defense. And when you give him time, he's able to do that. But when you don't give him time, he's running for his life back there. And when he's able to read and dissect a defense, not only is he elite at that, he's got a really good group of pass catchers as well, that one of them is bound to get open no matter who is out there. So I really think that the offensive line struggles have kind of nerfed that attribute from him. Because like I said, if he's not able to sit back there and find the open receivers, then you take away his best attribute, and all of a sudden, you're kind of lost offensively. I will say, though, UCF has been kind of below average in terms of getting after the quarterback this year. Right now, the Knights are 77th in pressure rate at 31.1% and only 2 sacks on the entire season, which is the fewest among Power 4 defenses right now. Now, they don't blitz that much. They're 106th in the country in blitz rate, and they're 76th in the country in stunt rate. So really, it's on Colorado's offensive line. Hey, one-on-one, they're not going to try to fool you with anything. Just win your matchup one-on-one. That's the key to this game, because I think if Colorado protects Shedeur Sanders, I don't know how UCF stops this offense, honestly. But if they get after Shedeur Sanders, that's how UCF could win this game.
I like that a lot. And Baylor got a lot of pressure on him last week, but Dave Aranda's known as a guy who messes around a lot and messes with the blitzes and coming from different angles, right? And if UCF's not going to do that, and you make their offensive line's life a little bit easier, it's even something we talked about all the way back to the North Dakota State game, where it's like, look, this team runs a stunt like every play, right? And they're making life hard on an offensive line that's trying to gel, right? And there are stretches of games. I thought in the first half against Baylor last week, I thought they were pretty good. It started breaking down in the second half as the game got wild, but I thought they were pretty good. It comes and goes to me. It looks like they have that thing. You almost like the the college football game, the meter with the crowd pulse.
Yeah.
It almost looks like it works on their offensive line a little bit, where it's like they go through stretches where it's like, man, okay, this team is rolling on offense. And then there's other stretches where it's like every play, like, what are we doing? But I'm with you. If UCF doesn't find a pass rush, that's the case in any Colorado game. If you don't find a pass rush,
they can be anyone.
Good luck.
They could literally be anyone.
I'm kind of in the boat that I think Shador's the best quarterback in the country.
He might be. Honestly, I don't think there's there are very good secondaries in college football, but if you don't get after Shador Sanders, I think he could pick apart almost any secondary in the country.
I think he sees the field better than any quarterback in the country.
Agreed.
And that's just if he gets time to see the field. And he can improv a lot too. Last week he have over 70 rushing yards. It was. I mean, some of the plays that he took off and ran were some of the biggest
excluding
plays.
Sacks, by the way.
Excluding sacks. Take the sacks out. But those were some of the biggest plays in the game last week. And there were moments where, again, I think the combination of those two things, of their run defense and of Shador just being Shador, that's what won him the game last week, and that's what they have to ride.
Dalton, Colorado, I don't know if you saw this. They're 14.5-point underdogs in this game. That does not seem right to me.
Not a fan of that.
Do you think Colorado just pulls off the outright upset, what would be one of the biggest upsets of the whole weekend, or do you think UCF kind of shows Colorado where they are in the Big 12?
It's a real – I will admit this is a really gutsy take. I have Colorado 38 and UCF 34. It's a gutsy take, but I think, first of all, that spread's too wide. I think it's too wide considering what we've seen UCF do. They got 2 easy wins, and they had their own miracle win against TCU, who has proven not great. Right, we just saw what happened to them against at SMU, and I think they got 66 points in that game. They had a miracle win of their own. I really think these are two teams on relatively even ground, and because it's UCF and because they're leading the nation in rushing yards, I think people are still looking at Colorado like it's last year's defense. I don't know how improved yet, because now they're playing a team like this. That's a real test in the run game with Harvey and Boone and KJ Jefferson. This is a real test for Colorado's run defense. If they pass it, though, we start having other conversations. So I'm taking Colorado. What I think is that it can be good enough, and if this game becomes about the quarterbacks, and if UCF doesn't get to the passer, and maybe if neither team – here's the thing. Let's say neither team has a pass rush, because Colorado hasn't found the pass rush yet. Which one do you have more faith in?
Colorado.
Right.
Yeah.
So unless UCF gets in a spot where, like Nebraska, they're running the ball extremely well early, and they get ahead, and then Shador with the pick six, and that game before we blinked was 21-0, right? And Nebraska's defense is better than UCF's, so they were going to hold that. If Colorado can get through the first quarter, I absolutely think they can win this game. I just think UCF, they have yet to prove consistently, because I think Jefferson's only thrown the ball 51 times through 3 games. It's somewhere around there. It's like he's not even throwing the ball 20 times a game. If they can make it Shador versus Jefferson, Colorado's going to win. And I'm going to take I know this is a gambling pick, but I don't think it should be a 14-point spread. I understand it's at UCF and the bounce house is going to be wild for this game especially, right? But I think there's real improvement in the run defense. I think it gives them a chance to win. As long as they have a chance to win in those last 5 minutes, we've seen it with Shador. I think he's the best quarterback in the country. I think he'll make it happen. A high-scoring game, it will not look pretty on either side on defense, I don't think. But I think if it comes down to the quarterbacks, give me Colorado.
Don, you are taking, just to let you know, you're taking a plus 455 money line in this one.
I don't think it should be that wide. If you told me UCF by like 5 or 6, fine. I don't think it should be 14.
You're taking a plus 455 money line. I am also.
We should have left this out and gone with the upset pick.
Dawn, I'm also taking plus 455 money line. I'm with you. The PFF College Football Show is riding Colorado this week.
We are gambling. We're riverboat gambling today.
We're riverboat Ron right now.
Yeah.
Well, I'm taking Colorado 33-30. I think, listen, the run game scares me a little bit because, yes, they haven't played the hardest competition yet, but I do think the improvement is real. And I don't know if the sports books have really seen that right now. So I think that's kind of a blind spot for them is Colorado run D. And unless KJ Jefferson all of a sudden becomes the one that we saw a few years ago, where he was one of the best rushing quarterbacks in the country, which is totally possible. But unless that happens, I think they can handle the run game enough. Not going to be great, but I think it'll be enough. And then on the other side of the ball, UCF's kind of pretty much radically changed their defensive philosophy if they want to get after Shador Sanders. I don't know if that pass rush, maybe it would be good enough to get after him, but they got to blitz more, they got to stunt more, and they don't do that often. So I think Shedeur Sanders, with those weapons, will do enough to pull off a massive upset. Massive upsets. I got Colorado 33-30 in this game.
The two fun matchups when Colorado's on defense. You've got Levante Bentley and Nakai Hill-Green against the run game. And then we get Kobe Hudson versus Travis Hunter. That's going to be fun on the outside. We haven't mentioned it. Kobe Hudson is a stud. Kobe Hudson versus Travis Hunter is low-key one of the best matchups of the week. He's really good. He's come in now to that Javon Baker role that he was in last year.
He plays a lot like him, too, a little bit.
He does.
Yeah.
They're just looking for that type of guy to take the top off, right?
Yep.
And Hudson versus Hunter is going to be a fun matchup. I think it's going to be a great game. I really do. I don't really get the 14-point spread thing. I know it's Colorado.
Yeah.
And I know last year –
people love betting against Colorado too. So,
and look, I think last year, UCF would have beat them by 30.
Yeah.
It would be a horrible matchup. But they've done things with this front seven that makes it not – if they give up on the ground, it sounds like a lot, but if they give up like 2 to 250, Colorado's going to win this game. If they give up 400, you can't give up 400.
Yeah.
That's going to be the difference. Is if they win on Sunday, we will come in here and we'll go, okay, they gave up like 230, 240 on the ground to a team that's averaging like 350.
Mm-hmm.
I think they have 1,100 rushing yards in 3 games. It's nuts. So if you keep them just keep them under what they usually go for, now you have a shot.
Absolutely. So both Dalton and I are taking the massive underdog to outright win in that game. Dalton, there will not be a massive underdog in this game. Number 2, Georgia at number 4, Alabama, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time on ABC. The storylines to know in this game is quite simple. This is the biggest game of the entire college football season so far. It's the first time that 2 top 5 teams are squaring off. Dawn, also, arguably, at least for us, because we put them top 2, the 2 best coaches in college football, and Kalen DeBoer and Kirby Smart. Kirby Smart number 1 for us, Kalen DeBoer number 2 for us. Also, 2 quarterbacks who have Heisman Trophy aspirations and first-round aspirations, and Carson Beck and Jalen Moreau. And not to mention, the winner of this game, at least for us, will be the new number 1 team in the country. I don't think you can say anything else. If Georgia wins, they'll unseat Texas. If Alabama wins, they'll move all the way up to number 1 probably as well. Grab your popcorn. This is going to be a blockbuster of a game. This is going to be absolutely special. It's the biggest game of the season that we've had so far.
Absolutely. I mean, this is college football now. We've had fun through the first few weeks. Now it's getting serious, isn't it? We got top 5 matchups. We're in conference play. I mean, this is as good as it gets. And last year we only got to see it once in the SEC title game. It was a fantastic game, and I would expect the same thing. This is as tight a game as you could have this early in the season, and it's one of several that Georgia's got coming. They've got the gauntlet coming to them. Bama and Ole Miss and Texas, and there's probably one I'm missing. And I mean, Georgia's got the absolute gauntlet they're working through in the SEC, and this is the first one.
That's why I said the biggest game of the year so far, because there's a chance that Texas, Georgia's number 1 versus number 2. There's other, like Tennessee, Georgia could be a top 5 game.
Tennessee was the other one. That's it.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why I said so far. It's the biggest game so far, but we have some massive games the rest of the season as well. But this is certainly going to be one of the biggest games of the entire season. Dalton, you have the Georgia offense in this game. What should we be looking out for when Carson Beck and that offense against this Alabama defense, what should we be looking out for?
So I love Carson Beck, and he's really good, and we know he's really good, right? We're talking potential first-round pick and all of that. But Georgia's passing game through 4 games, just does not look the same right now. No Brock Bowers and no Ladd McConkey from last year. Both went in the NFL draft, high in the NFL draft. And it's just they're in obvious passing situations. They're not clicking right now, and they need someone on the outside to step up. Whether it's the tight ends, Ben Urasek, Oscar Delp, Lawson Lucky at receiver. You've got Dominic Lovett, right? I mean, they just need to find something that's going to work consistently, because the more I watch them on 3rd downs and when they're not using play action, it's a real issue. I'm going to start with the non-play action thing right now, okay? 3 really good backs, right? Frazier, Robinson, Etienne. Use them, get to play action, really good offensive line. When we're getting in drop back situations, I got a passing grade of 54.4. I've got a receiving grade 58.7. I've got a team offense grade that's 100th in the country in non-play action situations. Last year, Carson Beck's passing grade in non-play action was 88.5. Right now, it's 55.7.
Wow.
It's just the weapons around him are not the same without Brock Bowers and without Ladd McConkey. And I know both of those guys went through their injuries last year, but when they were on the field, they were primetime players. That's why they both went in the top 40 of the draft.
And they're balling right now in the NFL,
and they're both balling in the NFL right now. Brock Bowers might already be the best tight end in the NFL. My goodness. And McConkey for the Chargers, really. But both, when they were healthy, primetime players.
Yep.
No question. They're missing those two specific guys in this offense right now. And what I'm seeing is just when they have to throw the ball, it's just not clicking. Nope, they're not getting open. The timing's off, and they're relying a lot on yards after catch. And honestly, they haven't even played a great coverage team yet. Clemson, who we normally think of as a great defense, but right now they're 58th in coverage grade, in part because they played Georgia. And Kentucky's 60th, and then they played an FCS team in Tennessee Tech. So they have not lit it up through the air by any means. Play action, and when they're working off the run game, solid stuff. It's working because, again, you have three really, really good backs and just a spectacular offensive line that you have to worry about blocking, right? But it's just, can they, in obvious passing situations, 3rd and 8? Can Georgia win 3rd and 8 in this game? Because they're gonna come moments where they have to throw into it. And look, Nick Saban's gone, and he was always a big defensive back guy. Alabama's still really good in the secondary.
Yeah,
it's still really, really good. 12th in coverage grade so far this year. And if you take out play action, go to those non-play action passes, they're in the top 7 in coverage grade and EPA per play allowed, and they are just elite at just shutting you down. They only have 2 interceptions on the year. I think it was in their first quarter of the year when Keon Sabb had the 2 interceptions. They don't get interceptions, but they shut you down. 2.89 yards per coverage snap, which is ridiculous.
Wow.
It's more than a half yard better than any other team in the country. Alabama's secondary, especially its safety with Sabb and Malachi Moore, and we've talked about a lot of their young corners, they're just lights out. And I know they haven't played dynamic passing games yet. Wisconsin obviously is not a dynamic passing game. Western Kentucky kind of is, at least at the G5 level, and they shut them out. And USF is dangerous with Byron Brown and Sean Atkins, some things. But, it's a lights out. It is like no chance. We still don't give up big plays. We still don't give up first downs in the secondary. So there's a bit of an element here for me with Georgia where they're going to be punching a brick wall a little bit in the passing game. If they're not ahead of the chains and they're in 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8, and Bama's loading the box to stop the run, I have faith in Carson Beck. Carson Beck can do it. We saw him do it all last year. But I need weapons to step up for this Georgia team. Okay, they just had a week off this past week, right after the Kentucky game.
Yes, they both had weeks off. They both coming off a bye week.
Well, that's going to be fun too to see what they come out of bye
Kalen
weeks.
DeBoer 2 weeks to prepare. Kirby Smart 2 weeks to prepare. That's going to be unbelievable.
Yeah, and I think there's so many. As much as the physical and all the big names that are playing on the field, there are so many strategic elements to this game, and you've got a ton of them on your side of the ball here too. But for me, I worry about Georgia if they get in too many 3rd and 7s and 3rd and 8s in this game, because through 3 games, they have not shown that they can just drop back and throw the football. And that's different from last year when they had Brock Bowers and Ladd McConkey last year. It was a lot easier. Beck was playing a lot better. The receivers, the weapons, everybody was getting open. It was working. Right now it's not working, and they're missing those 2 top weapons.
Dalton, my matchup on the other side of the ball. Can Georgia speed up Jalen Moreau just like they did last year? Listen, the book is out on Jalen Moreau. If you give him time in the pocket to find open receivers downfield, he's going to beat you. He's going to beat any defense in the country. That's just who he is, because he has an absolute rocket launcher attached to his right shoulder, and he wants to attack downfield. Right now, Dalton, his average at the target is 12.5 yards downfield, and his average time to throw is 3.03 seconds. That's among the 20 highest in the country. The year before, he was top 5 in average at the target and average time to throw. But if you force him to get rid of the ball quickly, that's where he has far more issues. You can see it right there. Over the last 2 years, he has a 43.2 grade, passing grade under pressure, which is 121st in the country. But when he's kept clean, he's 14th in the country with a 91 passing grade. When he's blitzed, he has a 107th best passing grade in the country at 63.2. When he's not blitzed, again, 14th in the country with an 89 passing grade. So when you give him time, he will beat you. But if you speed him up, that's when he all of a sudden turns into a guy that has a lot of issues. And Georgia knew this last year. In that SEC title game, they blitzed him on 48% of his dropbacks, and on 41% of his dropbacks, they got a pressure on him. And I know Alabama won that game, but it was the worst Milroe game of the entire season. He had a 50.2 passing grade. That was the lowest he had all year, even lower than the Texas game last year when he got benched the following week against USF. So Kirby Smart is going to be smart to blitz Milroe and get pressure at him and force him to get rid of the football quickly. I think it's pretty simple. Jalen Milroe is who he is. He is who he is. And I think Kirby Smart should blitz him as much as possible, get pressure on him as much as possible. That is the way for Georgia to win this game, because if not, Ryan Williams, those other weapons, they will win downfield against Georgia. But if you get pressure on him, that's how Georgia can win this game.
Yeah, I agree. I think what you have is how much does Kirby Smart trust his secondary, which I think you could argue, other than their offensive line, might be the best part of their whole team, Malachi Starks and those guys in the secondary. How much do you trust them to cover a pretty good Bama receiver group that's coming on, and certainly Ryan Williams, all the
stud.
stuff. I mean, you got a 17-year-old kid who is maybe the most important player on the field in a Alabama-Georgia game, in the biggest game of the year.
He should be a high school senior right now.
I mean,
now he's a pivotal player in this
biggest game of the year, and he might be the difference-making player. But you're right. There's not much quick game in this offense.
Yeah.
You don't get many 5-yard outs and much of the quick stuff. But I think it's going to be interesting to me. I think what I've seen from Bama's offense is a lot of very spread out sets, obviously with Kalen DeBoer, a lot of empty sets.
Yep.
And I think that's a moment, too, where Kirby Smart has to decide. There are some coaches who like when offenses go empty. They like to counter it with blitzing. Let's get 5-on-5 up front. Let's even get 6-on-5 up front. Let's get a free rusher. Let's send a 0, and let's make him either get rid of the ball or, honestly, most of the time against the blitz, when Milroe has success, he's taking off running.
Yep.
He's not going to throw through it. That's not what he does. He's going to take off running. He's going to be an athlete. He's going to be Jalen Milroe, right? Kirby, you're right. Maybe he goes to even, you said 48.3%.
Yep.
Might even go more than that. I have to wonder if you just do it every time. So I think that's big. We saw it in the Georgia game. We saw it in the Michigan game when they beat Bama. We saw it in the USF game. Well, that game was close. Why? Because USF kept blitzing Milroe. It just works. So Kirby, look, I think Kirby in this game, he's got to have one of his best. He's got to have one of his best called games in this game, because I do think, the threat of Milroe and the explosiveness and Ryan Williams emerging, it's a threat. It's a constant threat. And Milroe, he's got his flaws. But, man, does anybody else stress defensive coordinators out more than Jalen Milroe?
No. He's probably got the best tools in the country at quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, it's just insane physical tools. So you're right. Kirby Smart, I think Kirby Smart's going to have to call an A-plus game for Georgia in this one.
Yeah, definitely. So, Dalton, in what is the biggest game of the year so far, who will win this game and who will be our new number 1 team in the country?
It's a tough game, man. These are always you got 2 of the 5 best teams, or maybe 6 or 7 best teams in the country, and they're just so hard to pick. But something that's sticking with me is the fact that Alabama did win the SEC title game, and that was with Brock Bowers and with Ladd McConkey, and this Georgia. First of all, Georgia's passing game does worry me. I would need to see their passing. If you ask me which team has the better passing game in this game, it's Alabama. Right now, it's Alabama. Some other things we could argue, the run games, I think, are more even than you think. I think Jam Miller, Justice Haynes, Jalen Milroe, they've been running the ball well, too. They ran the ball well in Wisconsin, and Georgia's run defense has not been elite this year, and their defensive line has not been elite this year. Better in the pass rush, better, obviously, they blitzed the living hell out of Kentucky, and they just harassed them, but even Kentucky ran the ball well in that game, right? I mean, Georgia's been giving up rushing yards. I have Alabama 27-20.
Okay.
I think, first of all, I think of the 4 units that are on the field, I actually think right now Alabama's defense is the best one. I think Bama's defense can dictate a lot in this game if they get Georgia behind the chains. I think Bama's run game can have some success, and you've talked for a while about their offensive line. They got Caden Proctor back last week. Now it's the offensive line they were supposed to have. They had a good day against Wisconsin. Still some work to do, but Proctor came right in last week and led them in pass blocking grade. So if Proctor's in there and now Tyler Booker's back at guard where he's supposed to be, and you've got this elite offense and you got two elite. Are these? Did you have these two as the two best offensive lines in the country?
Yes.
Well, there you go. I mean, it's gonna tell a big story with these two offensive lines, but I like Bama's run game and their balance in this game. I think they're more balanced, and I think their defense. I think you have two similar defenses, but I think the matchup of Bama's defense against what's going on in Georgia's passing game right now gives them a little bit of an edge. I'm taking Alabama.
Okay. I will go the opposite way. I am taking Georgia to win this game, 24-23. I go back and forth on this one, Dalton. I truly think it's a coin flip.
Really tough.
It's a really, really tough game, but you mentioned right there that Kentucky game. That's the blueprint because Brock Vandagriff was looking lost out there when he was blitzed that much. I'm saying Jalen Monroe is a lot better than Brock Vandagriff. I'm not saying that. But at the same time, that is the blueprint for Jalen Monroe. And we've seen it this year and last year. This is just who he is. Like when you blitz him, when you get pressure on him, he's not that great. And Georgia knew that last year in the SEC title game, and they did it, and then they just ended up losing the game anyways. But I think Georgia's going to win this one, and with Nick Saban now gone, Kirby Smart is going to prove why he is, without a doubt, the best coach in college football. And Dalton, right now he's 1-5 against Alabama in his career. I think it goes up to 2-5 after this one. So I got Georgia winning this one 24-23 in a nail biter. And in the biggest game of the year, Georgia wins it and goes back to being the number one team in the country, at least for us, and that should be in the AP poll as well. And Dalton, unfortunately for me, as a Penn State fan, they are playing at the same exact time as the biggest game of the year, but this is still a really, really good game. That is number 19 Illinois at number 9 Penn State, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time on NBC. Storylines to know, pretty simple. These are two undefeated teams in the Big Ten that are squaring off right now. Nittany Lions, 3-0 record, that's to be expected, right? They started the year as the number 8 team in the AP poll, and so far they've played 3 schools who are currently outside the top 50 of PFF's power rankings in West Virginia, Bowling Green, and Kent State. Illinois, their 4-0 start is way more surprising. They haven't had a 4-0 start, Dalton, since the 2011 season, and they entered this year with a win total at only 5.5. So Illinois is 2 wins away from surpassing their preseason win total. And Illinois, Dalton, I don't know if you knew this, they have 2 top 25 victories. Kansas was ranked at the time. Nebraska was ranked at the time. The only other school who has 2 top 25 victories so far is Tennessee. So Illinois has really been one of the biggest surprises in college football. Obviously, it's their biggest test yet this Saturday night against Penn State in Happy Valley. But honestly, it's a really, really fun matchup that we didn't think we'd be previewing right now. We thought Illinois would kind of another rough year, maybe not make a bowl game. Funny line name, Brett Bielema. They're proving us all wrong right now, and they got a 4-0 start right now.
Yeah, Brett Bielema's doing a hell of a job over there.
Yep.
I mean, to get those 2 wins, especially the one last week, what a crowd in Nebraska. Dylan Raiola playing his ass off. I mean, what a great quarterback duel we had last Friday between him and Altmaier came out winning it. You've got an Illinois team that's feeling it, and I think, look, Brett Bielema's been doing it for a long time at several different programs, and he's been just really good at all of them. I can even remember back to the Wisconsin days, man. It was fun to watch his teams, and it's fun to watch this Illinois team play right now. This is the other game of this set that I don't understand the spread at all. I believe
not at all.
Penn State's a 17 or 17.5 point favorite.
17.5, yep.
Yeah, no. This is gonna be fun. If Penn State could mess around and lose this game. Absolutely.
They could.
Illinois plays really good, sound, aggressive defense. Luke Altmaier, look, we talked about it on Sunday. We talked about it in the preview last week. These 2 new offensive tackles that Illinois got, J.C. Davis from New Mexico and Melvin Priestley at right tackle from Grambling, they've changed this whole team. They have changed the entire team, and I know they got Sakari Franklin and Pat Bryant at receiver too, but those 2 offensive tackles, there was so many plays last year where it was just I flip on Illinois tape, and their offensive line just didn't give a chance at all. These 2 tackles have come in and changed the entire program. They've changed the offense. In turn, you change your offense, you start scoring, you change your defense, and everything starts rolling together. So I really like what Illinois is doing. I would just about guarantee this game I don't think they're getting beat by at least 17.
No, I don't think so either.
I think that is I just disagree with that. You mentioned a win, and both of those top 25 wins on the road.
Yeah. True.
I mean, just spectacular. Tennessee didn't even do that. One was road, one was neutral.
Yeah.
And that neutral was leaning pretty heavily towards them, it seemed like. So, look,
You see that, Eli? You're frauds. That's what Dalton's saying right now.
Easy now. We don't have to. We'll get to Eli. We'll get to Eli later. No, I mean Illinois though, they're playing really good football, and if Penn State messes around and they mess around with and they're playing better too. I think they're playing better than last year too. But this is going to be a fun game.
I cannot wait. So Dalton, you have the Penn State offense in this game. What should we be looking out for when Drew Aller and the Nittany Lions have the ball?
I've learned that anytime I get to highlight Andy Kotelnicki, it's a fun time. He's just such a good. This is a genius level play caller. And you go, there's so many things that we were worried about coming into the year with Penn State's offense, and it feels like he's fixing all of them, doesn't it? You know better than anybody, right?
He's fixing them, yeah.
You know, he is fixing them for sure. So, one thing I wanted to know. Illinois, super famous, super aggressive on defense for five-man fronts, cover one, single high defenses. It's 1 or it's 3, and they're blitzing, and they're really aggressive, and they can press up on you, and it's okay, cool. You're playing in the Big Ten. You're Penn State. Okay, you don't run 5 wide receivers out there every play. You use tight ends, and you got 2 good backs, big offensive lines. So what do they see a lot? A whole lot of single high defenses, right? Here's what I wanted to know: how are they looking against single high defenses? How's Kotelnicki working around this? How's Drew Aller working around this? Okay, so I went back to last year first. Against single high defenses, Penn State 68th in team offensive grade, 77th in passing grade and EPA per play. 107th in receiving grade.
Wow.
And I know they were 107th in receiving grade in a lot of things, and they had issues catching the football last year. This year, against single high defenses, which they're still seeing a lot because they still run the ball a lot with Allen and Singleton, and people are disrespecting their receivers, and you got Tyler Warren playing well, and Harrison Walls playing well, right? Against single high defenses this year, 7th best offensive grade, 23rd passing grade, number 1 in receiving grade.
Wow.
Penn State, number 1 in something in receiving grade, and 3rd in EPA per play. Andy Kotelnicki does such a great job. 1, he runs more motion than any team in the country.
Yep.
All right. 2, the formations and the full shifts of formations. And we've gone through even the only time he doesn't motion, right, is when he gets a personnel look that he wants or some look on defense that he wants, and he'll leave the same personnel out there, and he'll just run the play that he wants to, right, and in 15 seconds, right? All of those things combine to pretty much stretch the back end of a defense, both vertically and horizontally. It's maybe the best thing that he does, pre-snap and post, is use every square inch of the field. And if you're in single high and you've got 3 back there, or you're in man coverage and you've really got to just keep covering, especially if we're pass protecting, you have to cover all that ground. It's just difficult, no matter who your weapons are. And we talked about at Kansas how they didn't have NFL receivers at Kansas, but they were, 3rd in the country in receiving grade last year? They just punch above their weight class. Now Kotelnicki moves up in weight class. He's running this like Big Ten version. Like at Kansas, it was a little more spread out. He's running this Big Ten version. You mentioned Tyler Warren. There's multiple tight ends playing. I think I saw, what number was it? Did I see a number 75 or something motioning from the slot to crack somebody? Like he's using the personnel that he has, and even in that heavier personnel. So a lot of what defensive personnel and looks and play calls are based off of is just what offensive personnel is out there. So if Penn State has 22 personnel out there, right, 2 backs and 2 tight ends, let's say it's Allen and Singleton and Warren and I forget the other tight end. I always forget his name. Either way, another tight end out there. Well, the defense usually responds by going, okay, we're going to get in base and we're going to run single high, and they got heavy stuff going. But he's beating that, and he's finding ways to beat that. And Aller's ripping the ball through single high coverages. They're making plays at receiver. They're making plays at tight end. Tyler Warren's their leading receiver right now. This is a big part. There's a lot of things they've improved on, but to be able to and still run the ball through single high looks too when the box is loaded. Allen and Singleton are running the hell, especially Singleton is running the hell out of the ball right now. They have found this, and if this continues, now Illinois is a better defense than they've played so far
by a lot.
Certainly better than Westfire, Bowling Green, or
Kent
whatever.
State,
But at the very least, they've gone out against those defenses, and they have scored a lot of points. Which last year, not entirely sure they would have done that. That Bowling Green game last year, they might have lost.
Yeah,
honestly, with the way they
almost lost to Bowling Green again this year.
Well, right, but I'm saying like when Bowling Green got ahead, at least you felt like Aller and Kotelnicki could get him back in it. Fair. I don't know if that would have been the case last year with Aller and how really vanilla their offense was. There's so much in it, and for the purpose of beating this specific defense, it's going to be a lot of fun to watch Andy Kotelnicki and Drew Aller work against this Illinois defense that's super aggressive.
Absolutely. Yeah, so Dalton, my matchup I'm looking for. Oh, by the way, Penn State being number one receiving grade for anything based off how they looked last year in the receiving core is amazing.
You're in a good mood now, aren't
man,
you?
that made me so happy seeing that. But my matchup to watching the other side of the ball is pretty simple, is can Illinois give Luke Altmaier time against this Penn State pass rush? Because if you look just at the PFF grades, Dalton, Luke Altmaier has been one of the most improved quarterbacks in all of college football. In 2023, he had a 69.4 grade. That was 96th in the country. This year, he has an 86.9 PFF grade. That is 18th in the country. And while you can say, yes, he has improved, I will say that. But the biggest reason for that jump, Dawn, is the fact that Illinois drastically improved in pass protection. Last year, Illinois was 117th in the country in pass blocking grade, currently tied for 35th in pass blocking grade this year. And Luke Altmaier is a guy who really performs at an elite level when kept clean. Right now, 93 grade when kept clean. That is fourth among all quarterbacks in the country. But he's still kind of the same guy under pressure. He has a 43.2 PFF grade under pressure. That's 103rd in the country. So really, this is kind of the same Luke Altmaier we saw last year, where he was under pressure a lot last year and wasn't very good under pressure, and it's why his PFF grade overall wasn't great. The reason why his PFF grade is a lot better this year is because he's not under pressure as much as he was last year, which is why he's doing so well now. Penn State's defensive line has two top 150 prospects in the draft in Abdul Carter and Denai Dennis Sutton, both of them edge defenders. Abdul Carter currently a top 15 prospect on Trevor Sickman's big board. Find at PFF.com, by the way. Right now, the Nittany Lions are 10th in the FBS in pass rushing grade at 79.4, even though Abdul Carter hasn't been great to start the year. So if he gets it going, they could be even more unblockable, honestly. So this will give Illinois' offensive line their toughest test yet. If they can block them, I think Luke Altmaier and those receivers, like Pat Bryant and everyone, they could beat Penn State secondary, or at least put up a really good fight against them. But if Penn State's getting home every single play, then I think Luke Altmaier and this offense, they really have no chance to succeed. And we'll see, like last year, the Illinois offense just stalled out against Penn State and couldn't do anything. That was because they got pressure on him all the time. That's what you can see in this game if they get a lot of pressure on Altmaier. But if they protect him, then Illinois has got a real shot in this game.
You're absolutely right. And look, Illinois, it can't be said enough. Their pass protection last year was so bad that it got him hurt. It got him a concussion. He missed the last 3.5 games. So, I mean, and the improvement that we're seeing from them is what gives them a chance in this game. And you mentioned Altmaier being fourth in clean pocket passing grade. I think, if I remember right, the three guys ahead of them, I believe, ahead of him, I think are Cam Ward, Thomas Castellanos, and Jackson Dart.
Dart is up there. I think Shedeur Sanders is up there too.
I think Sanders might be a spot behind him. I think it's Ward, Castellanos, and Dart.
I think it was like a group of five guys too. I got to look it up.
And if Shedeur is in that, I mean, but this is the type of company you're talking about.
Yep.
Altmaier, when he's
like Heisman Trophy candidates.
I watched significant tape on like 85 or 90 quarterbacks in the summer, just getting through all my quarterback previews. And he was one of the hardest evaluations because there was so many plays that I just went, this is like a 1.5 second sack. Like I can't even judge what he's doing because he can't get to a spot to do anything, right? Altmaier's playing a really good football. When he's clean, he gets the ball out on time, he gets it to the right spot, and I was so impressed. You know, again, we talked last week that Nebraska-Illinois game was going to be about quarterback composure. Super composed in that environment, man, and two teams that were throwing haymakers at each other in that game. Altmaier was so good, so calm in the pocket in that game, and if he's allowed to be that in this game, Illinois gets really, really dangerous.
Yes, I'm looking it up right now. Jackson Dart, number 1, Thomas Castellanos, number 2, and Cam Ward, number 3, and then Luke Altmaier, number 4, in clean pocket passing grade this year. So really been impressive what he's done when he has a clean pocket. We'll see if he has a clean pocket against Penn State in this night game in Happy Valley. So, Dawn, who is winning this night game in Happy Valley, and does Penn State cover the massive 17.5-point spread they have right now?
I do not think they cover. Yeah. I think 17 is too much. I'm not in on that. Illinois has a good defense. When their offensive line's playing well, they have a good offense, and they have some balance, too, in their run game. I will take Penn State. I think they're the better team still, and I think, again, Andy Kotelnicki might be – we mentioned it with Kirby Moore last year was our guy, right, at Missouri as, like, the most consequential coordinator hire, and he turned around Missouri's offense. This year, that's Andy Kotelnicki. He's calling a spectacular game every week on offense. Actually, I'm more impressed so far with Penn State's offense than their defense, if I'm being honest with you.
Yep.
I think him and Aller, as long as Aller, because the one thing we know with Drew Aller, He's not going to turn the ball over. He doesn't turn the ball over. He has some misses. The accuracy comes and goes for sure. But if he can create those windows and against man coverage, so often when you're trying to beat man coverage and you don't have just an elite receiver, right, a Tetro McMillan or a Luther Burden or something, you do have to create. But I have faith that Andy Kotelnicki's going to create enough points to get ahead in this game. I think the pass rush for Penn State will do enough. I think Illinois up front is really going to compete. I think they're going to have their moments in this game. I've got Penn State 30 and Illinois 24.
Yeah, honestly, I also think they're going to cover pretty easily. I think Penn State's going to win. I have it 28-21 in this one, but I just don't see why Illinois. I mean, I could see Penn State maybe just in a really good environment in Happy Valley, a night game. And if they get pressure on Altmaier, it could get ugly for Illinois. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But if that doesn't happen, I don't see why they should be 17.5-point favorites right now. I think that's a very, very high spread. So I think Penn State's going to win, but it's going to be a much closer game than the odds makers anticipate. And Dawn, the last time that these two played in Happy Valley, it was a 9-overtime game. It actually set the record for most overtimes in a single college football game, and that was when they had to go back and forth with the 2-point conversions. And quite literally, I've never seen two offenses that didn't convert 2-point conversions. Like, they missed like 8 in a row, each of them. It wasn't like they would keep doing it.
If we're being real, last year neither one of them was a great offense in regulation. So even I
think a couple years ago, Sean Clifford's the quarterback. I remember.
Oh, okay. Well, okay, maybe that
broke my heart. It broke my heart watching that game, and my brother and my uncle were at that one. 9 overtimes. It won't be the thriller like that one, but I do think Penn State's going to win in a close one, 20-21.
Unless it is, and they're just playing until 3 a.m.
I'm not. I can't do that. No, that'd be horrible for us for our review prep.
Can't handle the stress
if
of
I'm
it.
up until 4 a.m. watching that. Yeah, I can't do that.
Yeah.
No.
But no, I think I do. I think unless Penn State's pass rush comes out this week at an elite level, this is going to be a fun game. It's going to be a tight one.
Absolutely, which is crazy that we're gonna have that and Georgia Alabama at the same time. Oh man, we have to be here because we have to have multiple screens.
You're gonna be hurting. Yeah.
I don't know what I'm gonna watch as a Penn State fan. I don't know what game I'm gonna watch.
That's why you have me. It's fine. I'll watch. I'll watch Georgia. I'll watch Georgia Bama for you. What a task! What an awful task that is.
Fair enough. And the final one we're talking about today is a 10:15 p.m. game Eastern time on ESPN. That is Arizona at number 10 Utah. The storyline to know, again, is just pretty simple. Is Cam Rising? Is he going to play or is he not going to play? What is he going to look like if he does play out there? He suffered a finger injury on his throwing hand against Baylor in week 2, and he was questionable all week leading up to the game against Oklahoma State. And most people, including Dorian Singer, their top wide receiver, said Cam is playing. Don't worry about it. He'll be out there. Dawn, and he was warming up pregame too. 20 minutes before kickoff, Kyle Whittingham not only announced that he won't be playing, he decided he won't be playing. They said they went into the huddle in the locker room and they said, hey, Cam, can you go out there and do it? And Cam's like, listen, I'm not 100% right now. And they said, all right, Isaac's going to play. They decided that 20 minutes before kickoff. Usually these things happen on game day, right? They have the entire day to say, okay, you're going to start, kid. 20 minutes before kickoff, Isaac Wilson finds out, hey, you're going to start today. So not a great situation for Isaac Wilson to make his second career start. But still, they won that game. But his injury status is still the biggest storyline heading into this week's clash against Arizona. And Arizona coming off a bye week after being dominated by Kansas State a couple weeks ago. So Arizona's had a couple weeks to try to recover from that loss and prepare for Utah. And Utah now is just wondering whether or not Cam Rising will be their quarterback this week.
Well, Coach Whittingham's just messing with you, right?
Dude, the best poker player in college football, bar none.
He didn't decide that 20 minutes before. He decided that back on Monday, and he just decided to mess with us all week.
Again, I bring up the story when we interviewed Kyle Whittingham last year, literally the week of the Florida game, and I said, Coach, Cam Rising coming off the torn ACL, is he going to be ready for week 1? And he's like, Max, he will be 50. He's 50-50. He might play, he might not play. And he didn't play, and we're like, okay, 50-50, and he didn't play the rest of the year. So Kyle Whittingham is the best at just lying.
Heavy 50.
Maybe not lying to the media. Yeah, heavy 50. Maybe not. I'm going to say lying to the media, but he's really, really good at holding his cards close to the chest, and I think he's done a great job with that. And obviously makes our lives very hard and Utah fans' lives very hard. But hey, it honestly helps out the team when you don't know who's going to be playing quarterback out there. So it's been really interesting to see what happens this week with Cam Rising. But Dawn, you have the other side of the ball with this Arizona offense that is looked kind of pedestrian at times this year. So what should we be looking out for when Arizona's offense goes up against a really good Utah defense?
Well, it's probably good that they got a bye week before this game to really get back to the drawing board after the K-State game when it just seemed they had no answers. And right now, my matchup for this game is Tetro McMillan against the world, because that's essentially what their offense has been through 3 games. Is he had the big 300-yard game against New Mexico. Then he was shut down against Northern Arizona in a not that impressive victory. You went over them double teaming and doing all make somebody else beat you. And against K-State, he had a decent game, but they need another answer. If it's the run game with Quali Conley, cool. That kind of hurts that Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt has those eligibility issues. If he's just done for the year, or we don't know what's going on there, and they need somebody else in the passing game to step up, because we've seen 2 different strategies with this now. With Northern Arizona, it was the bracket thing that you talked about. And with K-State, honestly, they just lined up in man coverage across the board, and McMillan was getting open just about every play. And K-State essentially, saying it without saying it, said, okay, throw it to him every time then.
Yeah.
Go let him get 30 to 35 catches. Throw every ball to him. We dare you, because everyone else, there was no separation. And
he was gassed in that game too.
Understandably so. Yeah. Understandably. I mean, he's open every play, but at a certain point, you just can't throw him the ball 35 times, can you? I mean, unless you... Maybe, unless he's got the endurance of Travis Hunter and he can just do that. But look, through 3 games, 85.8 receiving grade, 453 yards. That's the most by anyone who's played only 3 games instead of 4. I believe that's the 8th best receiving grade in the country. But they have nobody else at receiver or any position who has at least 100 receiving yards. It's just not this right now. At least from what we've seen before this bye week last week in the first 3 games, it's just Noah Fafita and Tetro McMillan trying to will them to the end zone, right? And look, Utah plays man coverage at a reasonably high rate, and they do pretty well at it. They have a top 20 coverage grade. They run a lot of cover 1, and in cover 1, they have a top 20 coverage grade. They're good in man coverage. Maybe they don't have that one individual guy who's like lights out, Will Johnson, stick him on McMillan, but they're going to compete. He had a 100-yard game against them last year in what turned out to be a blowout, but turnovers early in that game. I believe there was a block punt. Before you could blink, Arizona was up 28-0, and Utah just doesn't win games that they're down 28-0. That's not a thing. This Arizona, it's just I think we've said this for 2 or 3 weeks already. They need somebody else. Last year,
Jacob Cowing
last year they had Jacob Cowing.
Yeah.
They had Tanner McLaughlin. They had Jonah Coleman.
Right.
They had Michael Wiley, who had a great game in this game last year. But they have none of that right now. Quali Conley, I'm not even sure is right now better than Coleman or Wiley were last year, and certainly not in the receiving game. So they're lacking depth. And they're lacking answers when teams just get in press and they just lock up everybody else. And I mean, honestly, there was plays against K-State where it looked like it was, football's 11 on 11. It looked like 11 on 2. And you need something. I know he's maybe the best receiver in the country, but they need something else if they're going to win this game, especially in Utah.
Yeah, definitely. And like I said before, I mean, Jacob Cowing, as the weeks go on for Arizona, he looks more and more valuable from last year.
And the fun part in that game last year, Jacob Cowing had like 2 catches for 10 yards. But it's the idea that you have that guy. So then, okay, well, we have to worry about Cowing, and they're doubling Cowing, or they're doing whatever to Jacob Cowing, and now, okay, then Tet tees off and Michael Wiley tees off, and we're good to go. We have other threats, but right now there's not even other threats that can take it off of McMillan.
No, definitely not. And honestly, if Cam Rising doesn't play in this game, Dalton, it could kind of be a one-man show on the other side of the ball with Mekhi Bernard against the Arizona run defense. So Isaac Wilson got a second career win this past Saturday against Oklahoma State. Great win for him, obviously, but he was hardly the reason for their offensive success. He's the younger brother of Zach Wilson, obviously, has a 35.8 passing grade in that win over Oklahoma State. No big-time throws and 2 turnover-worthy plays. He did have some nice gamer moments in there. He had a couple nice runs in there and a couple decent throws in there as well. But overall, not a great passing performance from Isaac Wilson. Again, true freshman. He's got a long time. He probably is going to be the guy for Utah after this year when Cam Rising finally exhausts his eligibility. But not a great second game for Isaac Wilson in that one. Instead, what they did was they relied on Mekhi Bernard for most of their offensive production, and he did an excellent job against Oklahoma State. 26 carries, 186 yards, led the nation in week 4 with 142 yards after contact. So if Cam Rising is once again out, and the reason why his rushing grade is that low, I think he had a fumble in that game, so that's why I dragged it down so much. But overall, he was really good. I mean, 26 carries for 186 yards. I believe it's about 7 yards a carry or something like that if my math is correct. So he was excellent. But if Rising is out, Or if he plays and his throwing ability is still hindered by that injury to his, I think, ring finger on his throwing hand, they're going to need Mekhi Bernard again to carry their offense. And Arizona's run defense has been really shaky this year. Right now, they're 80th in run defense grade at a 73.1, and they're 99th in yards per attempt allowed at 5.3. But the one thing I'll say is the two games where they really struggled on run defense were against New Mexico and against Kansas State. And the two similarities between those two teams, New Mexico and Kansas State both have quarterbacks that can run the football very well. In Devin Dampier for New Mexico and Avery Johnson for Kansas State. They're each among the top 15 quarterbacks in the country in rushing yards this year. Isaac Wilson can run. Cam Rising can get out there a little bit, although he doesn't look as dynamic as he was in years past, notably so because of the knee injury. But you got to be account for them. But they don't need to be game planned for like Devin Dampier and Avery Johnson need to be. So I think the reason why those you mentioned before in the breakdown of the Arizona game, the linebackers really struggle because they don't know who has the football. Utah's a little more straight up, right? It's going to be Mekhi Bernard. And now, for Arizona at least, I'm still worried about them because I actually looked at it, Dalton. They're still one of the worst run Ds in the country, even when it's a straight up handoff. So that's still not great for them. But now, at least for their linebackers in this game and their defensive linemen and whoever, they know who will get the football. So now it's a matter of, okay, are you going to be physical enough and are you going to want it more than the offensive line across from you? Utah's offensive line has been really good this year. That's the question now. So it'll be more straight up for them against Mekhi Bernard, but it still could be a bad matchup for them. So if they only have to focus on him, though, maybe they could be a little bit better in run defense. But if not, then I think it could be a long night for the Arizona defense.
Yeah, they have very downhill linebackers that, much like, say, a Florida State, they really like to just get the gaps and work downhill, like you mentioned. The other problem they've had is tackling. If I remember right, seeing it earlier today, I think they have the second lowest tackling grade in the Power 5 as a team.
Let me look right now.
I think it was Texas Tech and then them towards the bottom down there. The tackling has been an issue. You're right. Getting physical with Arizona is the way to do it, on top of keeping the ball out of Noah Fafita's hands and not letting Tet get the 20 catches and 300 yards that he could get, right? So ball control is big, but you're right. Utah's run game is much more straightforward. You don't get it like say a Georgia Tech or a K-State, like you mentioned, where you have to worry about the quarterback so much. You mentioned Rising's mobility. It's solid. It's not A+.
Isaac Wilson can run, but not like Avery Johnson.
Yeah, it's a different thing, and their offense isn't based on that. It's based on getting downhill and getting 5 yards and getting behind their offensive line. Yeah.
So you're right. Actually, Arizona's second worst tackling grade in the Power 4 this year, right ahead of, I should say, Texas Tech, who is the worst. So yeah, Arizona 50.3 tackling grade.
Yeah.
Dalton, you and I had Arizona winning the Big 12 preseason, and we kind of feel a little shaky about that prediction right now. But will we get back on track with that prediction, or will Utah at home and what is one of the best home environments in college football, will Utah show why they're a top 10 team in the country
It's tough because part of this with Arizona in the Big 12 picture is that at least that K-State game was technically a non-conference game.
True.
That helps. They're not 0-1.
True.
And even if they were to lose this game, then they would only be 0-1 instead of 0-2. And I think there are some other teams in this conference who are better matchups for them, for just all the way around. Not as good on defense, not as good in the run game, especially as K-State. There's some good run games, and they have to contend with it. But I think they stand a better chance. You got maybe the two best teams in the conference right out front as your first two games. One of them, again, didn't count, but still. I've got Utah in this game. I just can't, from what I've seen from both teams, again, Utah's win over Oklahoma State was way more dominant than the final score will tell you. If you didn't watch the game, they dominated Oklahoma State for 90% of it, and then Alan Bowman gave them a little charge at the end and whatever. Utah was dominant. They're at home. They've been dominant at home. Since 2021, they have lost one home game, and that was to last year's Oregon team. That's just how good that Oregon team was.
Yeah.
Bo Nix and that crew, they're just nuts. But they've lost one home game in the last 3.5 years. Kyle Whittingham's just got the magic, doesn't he? And I just think what we've seen from Utah so far, for me, and what we've seen from Arizona, if Arizona didn't get significantly better and more well-rounded during their bye week, I just cannot in good conscience pick them. I can't do it because I know what you're saying. There's a chance Cam Rising doesn't play. They even dominated Oklahoma State without him. They did, and I just think Kyle Whittingham, he's got the magic. He just knows. They just know how to win games. They defy a lot of the analytics, and it's sometimes like the old Patriots thing or the Chiefs right now, where it's like somehow at the end of the game they just have more points than the other team. I think that's going to be the case again. I've got Utah 23-20.
Yeah, it's maybe not only maybe it's one of the best coaching staffs in college football. I actually have Arizona winning this game. I think they will get the second home loss for Utah since 2021. Like you said, 27-24. I have it. I just think with Cam Rising health still in doubt, Arizona having 2 weeks to prepare as well, I think the Wildcats pull off a massive road upset. I think we'll see a little bit better from them. I think the run defense thing is a very big question mark. But like I said before, the fact that they're not facing a truly elite mobile quarterback this week in Cam Rising or Isaac Wilson, that should help them out as well. I think the Wildcats get a massive road upset and reestablish themselves as a Big 12 contender right now. So I got Arizona winning this one 27-24.
How many yards does it take for McMillan? How many yards does he get in that scenario?
I think he probably needs a $150.
Think so?
Probably.
$150, maybe 200.
Yeah, $150. I would say $150.
150. If he doesn't get 150, they're going down. We think. I'm just curious what the number is because
it's got to be a lot.
Regardless, it's going to have to.
It's going to have to be triple digits.
It's going to have to be like Bolitnikov type performance. Feels like every week, but I was just curious. I was curious on that because I'm like, how much is it? Because
and Zemiah Vaughn's a really good corner too, so that'd be a great matchup.
They got a good group of them. They got three really good ones out there. There's not a terrible matchup for you. Look, it's hard to cover McMillan, but they've got guys who can at least battle.
I'm trusting Fafita, and Fafita I think is a better quarterback than anything Utah's got right now, especially with Cam Rising on an injured throwing hand as well. It's a risk. I'm taking a big risk with Colorado. I'm taking a big risk with Arizona. I'm going risky in the two Big 12 games we're talking about today, Dalton. Or two of the three, I should say. But yeah, I got Arizona winning this one. So Arizona 27-24. Before we go, we've got to do our upset pick of the week, Dalton. And right now, let's update the standings on the upset pick. Eli still in first place with 314 points. Dalton, you're still in second place with 102 points, and I am still in dead last place. I have not hit a freaking upset to save my life. I can't do it. I legitimately cannot hit an upset, Dawn.
There's been some rough ones this year. Man.
I suck, dude. I legit suck. Like, I don't understand what it is. I cannot pick an upset.
Picking underdogs is hard, man. It's hard.
Not for you guys.
Outright. I only got one.
Yeah.
And I've had two real close calls the last couple
weeks. Eli has two, right?
I think he got two of them, and they were pretty good.
Okay,
Cal got down to the 10-yard line against Florida State, and then the penalties and just mistakes started. That one got me, and then the Tulsa one a few weeks ago got me too. But yeah, no, you got to get one eventually.
We got it. So in the chat, give me your upset pick in the chat right now. Whoever's watching this right now, who's your favorite underdog pick, and basically how the point total.
If the chat has a majority on one, you changing yours?
No, I'm sticking with mine. I feel really good about mine.
You're going with it?
I feel really good about mine. But just to remind people how the point total is basically what if you pick a team to win in an upset, whatever their money line is the amount of points you get for that. So Dawn, start us off. What is your upset pick of the week?
All right, let's go down to New Orleans. Huge game in the American. We got USF going down to Tulane. They are, I believe it's 6-point underdogs. I will take the Bulls in New Orleans over the Green Wave. It's going to be a really fun game. Both teams have had similar starts to their schedule where they had really tough Power 5 games. USF has played Alabama and Miami in two Power 5 games. Played a really good game for about 3.5 quarters with Bama. Against Miami, they played a good first half, and then Cam Ward just took over.
Yep.
I mean, just what a monster Cam Ward is right now, right? Tulane, really tough loss to K-State. They easily could have beaten K-State, and Oklahoma kind of got to them. That's the one team that Oklahoma kind of scored on. Big thing for me here, Tulane right now is 107th in the country in run defense grade. USF is 36th, and these are two teams that want to run the ball. Mekhi Hughes for Tulane had a huge week against Louisiana last week. It was really the reason they won the game, but USF has four. They got four legitimate rushing threats. Byron Brown at quarterback, and then you've got Naquan Wright, Kelly Joyner, and Teron Keith. USF's other two games against not Alabama and Miami, it was, I think, Bethune-Cookman and Southern Miss. They scored 48 and 49 points. This is a high-powered offense that got stuck playing two top 10 teams early on, and actually for stretches in those games played them really well. USF's run defense is better. They've got four dynamic rushing threats, and I think they stand a better chance of stopping Hughes than Tulane has of stopping all of their guys, especially if USF picks up the pace. They run a faster offense than any team in the country when it comes to just the most plays and the pace of play. I think Alex Golish and the Bulls go in and get a big conference win to open up their American slate against Tulane.
Okay.
Plus 185 on that.
Sure. I am going with one that I, quite frankly, was shocked this is even an option for me. BYU plus 136 over Baylor. BYU just destroyed Kansas State 38-9, beat them by almost 30 points, and they're going up against a 2-2 Baylor team right now. I understand it's at home for Baylor, but Baylor just lost to Colorado, who we like, of course, but they lost to Utah as well. They beat Tarleton State, and they beat Air Force. Like, I think Baylor is one of the worst teams in the Big 12, and Utah, by all stretches, has looked like one of the better teams in the Big 12, and right now is in the top 20, at least in our ranking. I don't know why BYU is plus.
Are they just betting on a letdown?
I guess so.
That's got to be. And look, Baylor has played competitive football.
Sure.
It was a great game last week.
And they killed Air Force.
And they didn't play awful against Utah.
No, they lost by 11.
Yeah. They were not awful against Utah. I just think.
But this is a weird.
It's a letdown thing. It's a road thing. Did the AP rank BYU?
Yes.
I know we did.
Yeah,
I
definitely.
couldn't remember if they did. I mean, it's just odd. I guess they're just banking on.
They're 22 in the AP poll.
I mean, what do we think? Are they just banking on, that's more about K-State than BYU? Because I know, look, BYU has more than maybe any team in the country. They've exceeded our expectations, but that was a 3-phase beatdown.
Yeah.
I mean, that wasn't some squeak-out 1-point field goal win. They beat them in all 3 phases, and K-State's really good. They're gonna be really good moving forward. So I'm not exactly sure what this is about. Maybe we got to do some digging on the numbers on why this is the case, but I don't blame you making this pick at all.
I'm just looking. I'm trying to get on the board right now. This was the most obvious one. I'm like, I would pick BYU to win straight up anyways, even if it wasn't for the upset pick. So I'm taking BYU in this one. I'm praying I can finally get this one. But I recommend, if you were a betting man, to bet on Baylor, because
BYU fans are going to kill you.
They're going to kill me.
If you miss this one, if you can't break the streak with this, they're coming after you.
Whatever happens on Saturday is my fault if BYU loses this game. Absolutely.
Absolutely is.
Eli, you are currently in the lead. The only one of us has hit 2 of his upset picks so far, so maybe Eli should be the host of the show the more than I think about it, Dalton. But Eli, what is your upset pick of the week?
I'm going to fade Oklahoma. I'm taking Auburn at plus 102. I think it's going to be an ugly game. I think it's going to be really defensive. 2 real solid defenses. And after seeing Oklahoma's offensive output against Tennessee, not really thrilled about that. So give me Auburn 102.
You know what this is? This is Eli kissing up to his twin, Zach Tantillo, picking Auburn right here.
Shout out ZT.
Honestly, it's hard not to. It's hard not to make
Oklahoma's
this pick.
A mess.
Yeah, I mean,
a mess.
You got 2 teams really trying to figure it out on offense, and Oklahoma. It's not just against Tennessee. They look like that. They had stretches in the Tulane game where they looked okay, but this is a team that scored 16 points on Houston. And they scored 15 points last week, and a lot of that was kind of meaningless. I mean, they've just been shut down for parts of this year. This offense, the offensive line, the quarterback situation now, I don't blame Eli one bit for taking that. And Auburn, it's been tough for them too, because you've got a loss to Cal at home, you've got a loss to, was it Arkansas last week at home too? Yep. I mean, you got 2 teams reaching for momentum badly. Somebody's going to get it after this week, but he's right. It's going to be an ugly game. This game is at Auburn or at Oklahoma.
Yeah, let me look it up. I think
I don't remember if I think it's at Auburn. I want to say.
Yes,
I could be wrong on that.
I believe you might be right.
But I mean, these are 2 programs that need a win in the worst way
at Auburn.
Now. Yeah. I mean, we were looking at the rest of Oklahoma's schedule. If they don't win this game.
It could be tough to make a bowl game.
Man, oh man.
It could be really tough to make a bowl game.
They got Texas. They've got Bama. They've got Missouri. They've got LSU. With their
South Carolina.
With their offensive line, I don't know how they're blocking South Carolina.
Yep.
I don't know. But no, I don't blame Eli for making that pick. I completely get it.
Yeah, especially with Michael Hawkins Jr. making his first career start as a true freshman as well. It makes a lot of sense. And real quick, Dawn, I mean, could we just say it is not Jackson Arnold's fault? It's not. I don't agree with him getting benched at all.
They are team-wide as an offense. They have one
of the worst supporting casts for a quarterback.
They have problems all across their offense. I don't know what quarterback would go in there and play well right now. I have no idea.
So I disagree with it. And Jackson Arnold, I mean, just giving up on him after this and it's not his fault either. I think he's played fine, but yeah, I hate that they did that. But yeah, I don't hate the pick at all. So that's what we got for our upset picks. Daryl Turner in the chat has Buffalo over Connecticut. I kind of like that.
I looked into that one, and you know what? I had
Buffalo just beat Northern Illinois.
I had a sneaky suspicion because that was like a 14 or 15 point spread last week. I was like, nah. First of all, nobody in the MAC wins by 15 points because all those games are close always. But no, I mean a big win for them. Now they can say they got a ranked win. No, that's another one. I looked into. That was probably in my top top 4 or 5 of this.
Yeah, good pick, Daryl. So, yes, we got for our Week 5 preview show. Once again, we have a Week 5 review show on Sunday morning at 9 a.m. going over the biggest results of the weekend with our grades releasing as well. So make sure you guys tune in Sunday at 9 a.m. for our Week 5 review show. For producer Ty and producer Eli back there, for Dalton Wasserman, I'm Max Chadwick, and we'll see you guys on Sunday morning for our review show.